Her words hit harder than any slap. At her birthday party with 20 people watching, my sister looked right at me and said, "She's the family failure. She didn't even bring a gift." People laughed. My mother didn't stop her. My father looked at the floor. Even my 9-year-old son heard her. He tugged on my arm, asking why Aunt Lena was being mean. I didn't say a word. I smiled. Then I reached into my bag and handed Lena an envelope. She opened it, read what was inside, and her face drained of color. Her knees buckled. She actually dropped to the floor. The room went silent. You could hear glasses clink in the distance. No one spoke. And that was the moment everything changed. I didn't want to go to the party, not because I didn't love my sister, but because I knew what it would be like. Her parties are always a show, not just the expensive decorations or the champagne towers, but the way she performs in front of people. Everything's a spectacle, and if you're not part of the show, you're the punchline. Still, when my mom called and asked if I was actually going to come this year, I said yes. I told her Noah and I would be there. I didn't want to give them another excuse to write me off. I'm 32, divorced, raising a son on my own. 2 part-time jobs, one at a bakery in the mornings, another doing admin for a dental office at night. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. I don't complain. I keep my head down. I've learned how to make $5 stretch, like 20, and I've gone without new clothes or weekends off, so my son never feels like he's going without. My sister Lena, on the other hand, has always had a different life. She's 28, beautiful in that effortless way that turns heads when she walks into a room. She has a huge social media following, a sleek apartment downtown, and a closet full of designer bags she didn't pay for. She knows how to talk to people, especially when she wants something from them. She has our parents wrapped around her finger, especially our mom. Our mom, Diane, is the kind of woman who cares deeply about appearances. Her nails are always done. Her smile is always wide. And she never forgets to remind people that both her daughters were raised with class. But in her eyes, only one of us has lived up to that. My dad, Richard, is quieter. He mostly avoids conflict. When things get tense, he disappears into his phone or pours another glass of wine. He's never been cruel to me, but he's never stood up for me either. And then there's Noah. My world. He's 9 with a heart bigger than most adults I know. He's smart, sensitive, and always watching. He catches every expression, every pause. I've worked hard to make sure he sees strength in me, not struggle. But sometimes, I wonder what he really sees when we're around my family. That night, before we left, I dressed him in his nicest shirt, one I found on clearance and saved for special occasions. I put on a dress I hadn't worn in years, touched up my makeup, and took a deep breath in the mirror. We drove to the venue, in my old Corolla, parking a few blocks away because valet felt too out of place. The rooftop was already packed when we arrived. White balloons floated over gold-trimmed tables. A live band played soft jazz while waiters circled with trays of mini crab cakes and sparkling drinks. I saw Lena laughing at the center of it all, dressed like a movie star in a silver gown. She looked straight through me as we approached. "Hey," I said, smiling politely. "Happy birthday." She gave me a quick side hug and said, "Wow, you actually showed up," then turned to Noah. "Hey, kiddo," she added with a softer tone, as if to make up for the jab she'd just thrown at me. I smiled tightly and led Noah to a quiet corner. He wanted a soda, but there was nothing without alcohol at the bar. I asked a waiter if there was water for kids. He looked confused and wandered off. I stood there invisible again. It wasn't just the luxury or the looks people gave me. It was the feeling that I didn't belong, that I was always the reminder of what not to become. Lena was the dream. I was the warning. But still, I stayed. I told myself it was for Noah, that maybe this time would be different. Maybe they'd see me, really see me. I had something important in my bag, something I'd been planning for weeks. I wasn't there to beg for acceptance. I was there to offer something no one expected. And despite everything, despite the whispers and stares, I kept my head up because I knew the moment was coming. And when it did, I would be ready. The music got louder as the evening went on, and so did the laughter. I kept a polite smile on my face, answering questions from relatives I hadn't seen in years. Most of them surprised I still lived in the same part of town, still working little jobs as they called them. One of my cousins even asked if I was finally seeing someone again, as if being single was some kind of personal failure. I laughed it off like always. I had grown used to people confusing struggle with laziness, quietness with weakness. But this night felt heavier, like something was building. And deep down, I had a feeling it would come from Lena. About an hour in, Lena stepped up onto a small stage near the bar. A spotlight hit her as the band went quiet. She raised a glass and gave a little speech, thanking everyone for coming, thanking her friends for making her feel like the queen she is, and thanking our parents for always believing in her. Her voice was smooth, rehearsed, charming. She didn't thank me, not even a glance in my direction. Then someone called out, "Open your gifts, Lena," and everyone clapped like it was a performance. She giggled, flipping her hair, and started tearing through elegantly wrapped boxes. Designer perfume, a gold necklace, gift cards, spa packages. I watched from the edge of the crowd, holding Noah's hand. He was getting tired, leaning into me. I told him we'd leave soon, just a few more minutes. Then Lena held up the plain white envelope I had handed her when we arrived. It looked painfully ordinary in her perfectly manicured hands. "What's this?" she said, turning to the crowd. "Oh, it's from Ava." People turned to look at me. I felt the heat crawl up my neck. She waved it in the air like it was some kind of joke. "Guess she couldn't afford wrapping paper," she said, laughing. A few guests chuckled. My stomach sank. "She probably couldn't afford a gift," she added louder this time, making sure the whole room heard. That's when the laughter turned sharp. It echoed off the rooftop, bounced off the walls, landed right on my chest. My mother laughed along softly, nervously, but she didn't stop her. My father looked away, pretending to check his watch. He couldn't even meet my eyes. Noah looked up at me with wide, confused eyes. "Why is she saying that?" he whispered. I bent down and whispered, "It's okay. She just doesn't understand." But something in me cracked. Not anger, not quite sadness. It was something different, a quiet strength, a voice inside me that finally said, "Enough." I let go of Noah's hand, walked through the crowd without saying a word, and stepped right in front of Lena. I took a deep breath and smiled. "If you're going to open it, go ahead," I said. She looked a little thrown off by my calmness, but smirked and ripped it open dramatically, clearly expecting a card or maybe a handwritten note. But what she found instead stopped her cold. Her eyes scanned the check in disbelief, then the letter, then the check again. The crowd leaned in, trying to see what had changed, but Lena was frozen. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She looked around as if trying to understand what just happened. Then she took a step back and another, and then she sat down, not like a dramatic faint, like her body couldn't hold her up anymore. Silence fell over the party. The band had stopped. The waiters stopped moving. Even the breeze seemed to pause. No one knew what was in that envelope yet, but everyone knew something had happened. Everyone turned to me, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I felt powerful because I knew exactly what I had given her, and I knew exactly why. But I wasn't done yet. Everyone stared at Lena, but I kept my eyes on Noah. He was watching me with a look I hadn't seen before. It wasn't confusion or fear. It was something like pride. He didn't know the details yet, but somehow he understood that something big had just happened. That his mom, who always tried to stay out of the way, had just done something important. I turned back to Lena. She was still sitting on the edge of a lounge chair, her silver dress pulled around her, hands trembling slightly as she held the check and the letter. She looked up at me, blinking like she was trying to come back to reality, but I didn't say anything to her yet, not yet, because before that moment, no one knew what I had been doing. No one had asked. No one had cared. For the past year and a half, I had been working in silence, waking up at 4 a.m. to bake before Noah got up for school, spending every break and weekend learning how to run an online business. I had always loved making natural skincare products, lotions, scrubs, lip balms. So I started small. Etsy orders here and there, selling at farmers markets, learning how to build a brand from scratch. I shipped everything myself, packed it by hand, and wrote thank you notes to every single customer. At night, after Noah was asleep, I took online courses, business, digital marketing, branding, free ones, cheap ones, anything I could get my hands on. It wasn't glamorous. There were months when I only made $20 after costs. Months I thought about quitting, but I didn't. And 6 months ago, one of my TikTok videos showing how I made a body butter from scratch went viral. Within a week, I had over 40,000 followers. Orders came pouring in. Then came a message from a woman named Chelsea, who ran an e-commerce investment group for women-owned businesses. She saw potential in what I had built and offered to partner with me to scale it up. 3 weeks before the party, the paperwork was finalized. My share from the initial deal? $40,000. Not a lottery win, but enough to breathe for the first time in years. Enough to pay off my car. Enough to give Noah more than just enough. Enough to finally feel like I had built something that couldn't be taken away or dismissed with a laugh. And still, I didn't tell anyone in my family, because I didn't want to prove anything to them. I didn't want applause. I didn't want my mom to suddenly act proud, or my dad to finally acknowledge me. I just wanted to do it my way, quietly, honestly. But when Lena made me the joke of the night in front of Noah, in front of everyone, I realized I wasn't just there to be polite. I was there to rewrite the story they had all decided for me. I chose the check amount carefully. $25,000. Enough to shock her, but not enough to ruin her. Enough to make a statement. And the letter inside that took me 2 hours to write. It said, "For years, I've watched you chase dreams. Talk about starting a fashion line and wait for someone to fund it. I figured you'd never expect it to come from me. But here's a start. Use it wisely or don't. Either way, this isn't about the money. It's about proving that I am not who you say I am. I never was. From your sister, the one you called a failure." I hadn't planned to hand it to her like that, but when she called me out in front of everyone, I didn't flinch. I handed it over because I wanted her to see, really see who I had become. And I didn't need to raise my voice or throw a tantrum. I had already done the loudest thing a quiet woman can do. I built something that spoke for me. Now the entire room knew, and so did she. Lena didn't speak right away. She held the check like it was a live wire. Her fingers hovered over the letter, her perfect nails trembling slightly as she reread it. Her eyes darted back and forth across the words, trying to process what was happening. I stood in front of her, calm, not smug, not angry, just still. And then her mouth opened. "Is this real?" Her voice cracked slightly. She wasn't performing. Now. This wasn't a moment designed for her social media story or a dramatic punchline. This was raw, unprepared. "Yes," I said, "it's real." She looked at our parents. My mom's eyebrows had lifted so high they nearly disappeared into her hairline. She glanced at my dad, who had finally stopped pretending to check his phone. He was watching me like I was a stranger, like he was seeing something for the first time. The silence spread like spilled wine, thick, uncomfortable. Then someone, my cousin Dylan, broke it. "What's in the envelope?" Lena looked down at the check. Again. Her voice was barely audible. "It's a check from Ava." The way she said it, like it was some kind of contradiction, like the words didn't make sense together. My Uncle Jay leaned forward. How much? She hesitated, then held it up without a word. A soft gasp rippled through the crowd as people read the number. $25,000, clear as day. Then eyes turned to me. Questions behind every stare. How? Why? Was this a joke? She gave me this to start my fashion business, Lena said, still half in disbelief. She said she believes in me. That line hit harder than I expected. Because it was true. For all her cruelty, for all the years of passive aggression and public jabs, I had still written that check with no strings attached. I didn't want her to fail. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to end the story they had written for me. She believes in me, she repeated, quieter this time, as if saying it made it more real. No one laughed now. There were no clever follow-up comments. The music had stopped completely. Even the waitstaff had frozen. My mother finally stepped forward. "Ava," she said slowly, "what is this?" Her voice wasn't warm or cold. It was cautious, uncertain. I looked her in the eye. "It's success. The kind you didn't see coming." I didn't say it to hurt her. I said it because it was the truth. For the first time in my life, I wasn't standing on the outside looking in. I wasn't asking for space. I had taken it, earned it. I turned and walked back to Noah, who was still standing in the corner, holding a half-melted chocolate from one of the dessert tables. He looked up at me with that same expression. "Are we leaving now?" he asked softly. "Yeah," I said, bending down to kiss the top of his head. "We're leaving." We walked past guests, still frozen in shock. My dad opened his mouth as if to say something, but nothing came out. Lena stood silently behind me, still holding the envelope like it was heavier than anything she'd ever carried. As we neared the elevator, I heard someone whisper, "That was the most badass thing I've ever seen." Noah smiled. "Was that about you?" "I think so," I said, and I smiled too. We rode the elevator down in silence. When the doors opened to the lobby, the night air hit my skin like a reward, crisp and freeing. Outside, I buckled Noah into his seat and sat in the car for a moment, letting the silence settle. Not the kind that comes from being ignored, but the kind that comes from finally being heard. That envelope wasn't just paper and ink. It was a declaration, a full sentence in a voice I hadn't used before. I wasn't the family failure. I was the one who refused to quit, the one who built something real when no one was looking. And finally, they saw me. The next morning, my phone was unusually quiet. No passive-aggressive texts, no group chat notifications, no vague family updates or forwarded memes from Mom, just silence. And it felt good. I made pancakes for Noah and let him add way too many chocolate chips. We ate in our tiny kitchen with the sun pouring in through the window. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't anxious about what came next. I wasn't bracing for judgment or rejection. I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone. I had already done that. Around noon, I got a message from Lena. Just one sentence. "Can we talk?" I stared at it for a while, not because I didn't want to respond, but because for once I had the power to choose how the story continued. Not out of fear, not out of obligation, but from a place of clarity. I waited a few hours before texting back. Sure, but not today. That night, I got a call from Uncle Jay. He didn't ask questions. He didn't dance around it. He just said, "I'm proud of you." And then after a pause, it was about time someone made them all look in the mirror. It was the only call I answered. Over the next few days, things shifted. Mom started tagging me in her Facebook posts. My daughter Ava, the entrepreneur. She didn't mention that she hadn't supported a single step of the journey, but I didn't correct her. I didn't need to. Dad called once, said he was sorry for not speaking up that night. I told him I understood, and I meant it. He was never the loud one. He was the one who hid behind the noise. But the biggest shift came in the smallest moment. Noah came home from school a few days later with a handmade card. It was construction paper, crooked edges glued with glitter that would never come out, of the carpet. On the front, in his 9-year-old handwriting, it said, "My mom is a boss." Inside, he'd drawn me holding a giant check and a superhero cape. I cried in the car after I dropped him off the next morning, because no check, no viral video, no business deal could touch that feeling. The feeling of knowing that my son saw me not as a victim, not as someone people pied, but as a fighter, a creator, a woman who didn't back down when it would have been easier to stay small. That moment at the party didn't fix everything. Lena didn't become a different person overnight. She's still herself, dramatic, sharp, and used to being the center of attention. But the next time we saw each other, she was different, quieter, maybe even humbled. She didn't say sorry the way I dreamed of hearing, but she did hand me a small package. Inside was a gold bracelet. It wasn't expensive, but it was real. The tag read to the strongest sister I know. We didn't hug, we didn't cry, but something between us shifted, not erased, but altered. For the first time in years, it felt like we might actually learn how to coexist. Maybe not as best friends, but as women who finally saw each other as equals. I don't think my family will ever forget that night, not because of the check, but because for once, the girl they underestimated stood tall and spoke volumes without ever raising her voice. Here's what I've learned. You don't have to scream to be powerful. You don't need validation to be valuable. And you don't have to wait for permission to succeed. Sometimes the people who doubt you the most are the ones who gave up on their own dreams. And sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to stop shrinking so others feel comfortable. Because your success is not an apology, it's a statement. And sometimes all it takes to change everything is one envelope, one truth, and the courage to hand it over with a smile. If this story moved you, even just a little, do me a favor. Like the video so more people who need this message can find it. Share it with someone who's ever been underestimated, overlooked, or silenced. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had your own envelope moment? I read every single one. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel for more real, raw stories like this one, because you never know who needs to hear the truth today. Thanks for watching, and remember, your voice matters even when you whisper.